Hello everyone, Stealthy Sharon here, and today we're taking a look at the Humble Choice Bundle for July 2021. My process for this is I play each game for roughly about an hour, then I tell you my thoughts on them, and ultimately if they're even worth your time. Alright, without any further ado, let's get to it. The first game we'll take a look at is Ancient Domains of Mystery, or ADOM. It's a roguelike game set in a fantasy world. Now, I don't know about you, but I had to look up what the difference was between roguelike and roguelite. As I understand it, a roguelike is a game where you start over with absolutely nothing carrying over from your previous run, whereas a roguelite usually has some sort of currency or item or something that goes into your next run. Anyway, now that I cleared that up, ADOM is a very interesting game. Apparently it's been in development since 1994. Not meaning that it's an unfinished game, but just that the devs have continued to work on it since that time, adding things and refining the game. The game itself is kind of complex with a lot of moving parts to the game. There's a lot of customization with your character, from the plethora of races and classes to choose from, and the leveling process with choosing skills and talents. The game suggests a certain freedom that makes you feel like you could play your character the way you want. I think the biggest turn-offs for most people will probably be the very simple graphics, although they are a huge step up from the ASCII art. And the complexity of the game will probably scare people away. Although there are a lot of options that can be tweaked to make the experience easier, or harder if the player wishes. Bottom line, I definitely would like to continue playing this game. I'm not sure how many runs I'd give it before getting bored, but the old school feel and the freedom it offers interests me enough to keep going. Our next game is a roguelite called Deadly Days. It's set, as you could probably already tell, in a zombie apocalypse, this time caused by a very questionable hamburger recipe. In the game, you control a band of survivors who must scour the city and gather supplies to continue on in their miserable existence. Essentially, each run plays out with you choosing where you want to go and then being dropped off by a bus. You control the survivors by clicking where you want them to walk or loot. The caveat is that it controls everyone, and you don't manage each person individually. This can lead to some tense moments when the party gets split up, and you have to try and reposition the party back together. You explore the map, looting as much as you can before nighttime. Once dusk falls, the danger level of the zombies increase, elevating the risk you take to get your sweet, sweet goodies. As you continue on with your success, the danger level increases naturally, causing you to have to deal with higher risk even if you're trying to play it super safe. I really like this system, and I felt each run was very fast-paced, which kept enticing me to do just one more. Even if everyone died, it didn't sting that much because I knew that I could just jump right back in. I thought the management side of things was a bit light, and I didn't have much to do in between runs because I didn't have the resources or items. However, that could be because I was only in the early stages of the game. This is definitely a game that I'll return to. I don't think I play roguelites as much as intended, but probably would play through this to the end at least once. The next game is Swine, an HD remaster of a game originally released in 2001. It's a real-time strategy that focuses on battles and managing units. It doesn't have any sort of resource gathering that I know of. Swine reminded me a little bit of another old RTS called Myth 2 Soulblighter, which I'd really love to see remastered someday as well, but getting back on topic. It also reminded me of Company of Heroes, but that's mainly due to the setting. The conflict is between the pigs invading the rabbits' country, which seems to be a riff on World War II with Germany occupying France.
On August 3rd, under the orders of General Iron Tusk, the National Army of Pigs crossed the border without warning and penetrated deep into Carrotland territory. In only 2 weeks, they burned everything to the ground and blockaded the capital.
There are 2 campaigns for each faction, but I only explored the rabbit story in my time with the game. Nothing from the story really seemed all that stand out to me, and I couldn't really see any cohesive plot from mission to mission, but that could just be that I was in the early stages. As stated earlier, there is no resource gathering, so management of your units is essential because if you lose even one of them, it can be a huge blow to your forces. Each unit has their own special abilities they can use to further the micromanagement of the troops. Another interesting feature of the game is the units need fuel and ammunition in order to operate, so you have crates that you can tow around to provide support for your front line. One thing that I didn't like was that you couldn't put your units in a formation, so you had faster units like your tow truck or commander, who couldn't fight, running up to the front and getting shot up. That's probably just a product of its time, and that you're supposed to be managing your units better than I was. All in all, I'd rather just play Company of Heroes, which provides a very similar experience and plays a lot better in my opinion. So I really wouldn't bother with this one at all. Elderborn is a Souls-like first-person melee combat game. The setting is rather dark, and the place you're exploring was kind of interesting. It reminded me a lot of that Lovecraft story, Dagon, where the guy is exploring some ancient tomb or temple or something like that. The actual gameplay is fun too, and responsive, which is a huge plus for a game like this. Using different weapons and setting up appropriate combos was really satisfying. Some people on the Steam reviews were saying how the combat reminded them of Dark Messiah. I definitely can see that comparison. Despite it being a Souls-like game, I didn't find it super difficult though. I only died once if I remember correctly, and it was because I let my health get too low to try and complete one of the game's many challenges. However, in my time with the game, I didn't reach a boss, so take my comment on difficulty with a grain of salt. The music is another selling point of the game, having a decent metal soundtrack. I didn't hear that much, but what I did listen to I thought worked well with the game. To be honest, I'm not really a big metal fan anymore, so I didn't really know if I'd like it or not, but it's actually pretty good. I definitely want to continue playing this one at some point, and according to the Steam page, the game is only about 8 to 10 hours long, so it's nothing that would be a huge time investment either. The next game is Bee Simulator, which is a game about bees. Yeah, big surprise. I'd say that the developers were trying to create this game largely for children, or at the very least, a family-friendly audience. And they created it also to raise awareness on the importance of honeybees. I thought the educational awareness aspect of the game was a nice addition, and they included different factoids about bees, their environment, and dangers posed to their habitats. As stated, this is all done in a presentation that would appeal to children, which might be an issue for some. The game world was nice to look at, which takes place in a park/zoo, so there were plenty of different things to see from the perspective of a small insect. I found it fun zooming around as a bee, collecting pollen and performing various open-world challenges that are presented. I think my favorite activity was the racing, but there are others like doing a memorization game with dancing, or fighting wasps, but the last one is just meh, with it being tied to QuickTime events. There's a story to the game as well that seems to revolve around humans destroying the bee's hive, and maybe potentially finding a new home? Not quite sure on the last bit because I didn't get that far. The game is decent though, but I did have my expectations set really low for this game, so I ended up enjoying what I played. I think it's worth a try if you're interested in the concept, but just don't expect anything amazing. Kill It With Fire is a game with a very simple but very important premise that all spiders must die. I'm not really sure how to classify what kind of game this might be. Basically, you start in a small section of a house. Eventually, this does open up to other areas outside of your home. From there, you're tasked with killing spiders. As you kill more spiders, you can unlock various doors and containers that are gated off until you reach a certain threshold. Along the way, you also have a clipboard which has other tasks that range from super easy or very difficult, like trying to kill 2 spiders with 1 buckshot. These tasks don't necessarily always have something to do with killing spiders. Sometimes they just play into the madness of the game, such as emptying out your refrigerator because, well, just because. As you play, you unlock more equipment to carry out the righteous deed of eliminating these 8-legged abominations. Some of them start to get over the top, such as shooting at them with a revolver, or just straight out chucking Molotovs channeling the game's title. Although, maybe that's not too crazy given the adversary you're facing. There's also different kinds of spiders that have different abilities, which adds more difficulty in later levels. I thought this was a fun little diversion of a game, but not anything you'd spend a lot of time with. In my hour with it, I did about half the missions, although I didn't 100% them. You might get a few hours of entertainment out of it. If you liked what you saw, then definitely give it a try. The next game is Paradise Killer, an investigation game where you play as Lady Lovedeyes, who is called from exile to investigate the murder of a group of important people known as the Council. The game has a very unique setting, and to be honest, a lot was thrown at me that I think a bunch of the stuff just went right over my head. From what I got, there are a group of people, known as the Council, that are trying to create an island utopia. Each attempt ends in some kind of failure, having them to start over and bringing everyone along with them to the next island. I think gods gave humans this ability at some point or another. It was kind of confusing, but I'm sure more things would be revealed as you play, which was already apparent just in the items that you could pick up or the characters you interact with. As far as investigating goes, I didn't really get around to that much because I was interested in just exploring the world and finding out more about it. After a brief introduction, you're just tossed onto the island and you're left to your own devices. Anything you do find that is pertinent to your investigation is logged in your Starlight, a laptop that acts as a notebook. I like that everything got put there because I imagine I'd probably be consulting it a lot as the game progressed. Also, I found it really chill just to explore because the soundtrack was amazing. I really love the upbeat tunes in this game, and if we're rating it on the soundtrack alone, then it's already a 10 out of 10. All in all, this game seems like it will really make you think about what's really going on in the world and what the different characters' motives are. Definitely take a look if you like that style of game. If not, then at least give the soundtrack a listen because it's great. Nimbatus, the space drone constructor, is a game where you're traveling through space using drones to carry out specific missions. It's very much a trial and error game where you build something, see if it works, and if it doesn't, then it's back to the drawing board. I thought the tutorial for this game was really well done. It gave you enough to figure out what you're supposed to do, and then they just let you do it. And if it didn't work, then you could go redo it and figure out why it didn't work the first time. Many of the parts you place on your drone need keybinds. This made it a little difficult to remember what did what because potentially each drone could have something slightly different. And with the 360-degree movement, up isn't always up, so that means that clicking W might have you careening into a hard surface. As stated earlier, the main crux of the game is the survival mode, where you are the captain of the Nimbatus, a giant mobile drone factory spaceship that is tasked with exploring the universe. However, there is some mysterious assailant that tries to stop you and takes pot shots at you as you travel from system to system. You need to make choices to do certain missions to get the parts you need and move on to stay one step ahead of your enemy. I felt this part of the game took inspiration from other titles, most notably FTL. As far as the drones go, the only other game I played like it was Kerbal Space Program. I liked that game a lot, but was horrible at it. I have a feeling Nimbatus will be the same, although I'd still recommend Kerbal Space Program in a heartbeat, so I think this game is worth giving a try as well. The next game is Dirt 5, which is an off-road racing game in a well-established franchise. I want to preface everything I say here first by saying I don't play racing games. I've never really been a fan of them. The last racing game that I played, and I use that term loosely, was Burnout Paradise. That, and the occasional Mario Kart match every now and again. So I don't really have much to compare this game to. With that out of the way, I was pleasantly surprised with this game. I had a lot of fun with it. Although that probably means it's not a very realistic racing game at all. I thought the effects were nice with the changing weather and the wear and tear on the cars. Each track was really nice to look at too. All these things might be features of other racing games though, but for me, I was pretty impressed with what I saw. As I said, the racing was really fun. Definitely more of an arcadey racing game. I played with automatic transmission too, so I didn't bother with shifting gears, and played this on a keyboard, which I know isn't really a thing to do for racing game aficionados. I also can't really comment too much on the car choices, as I didn't get that far in an hour playing, although I don't really know anything about cars or racing as a sport, so yeah. I did think this tank-looking car was kinda crazy though. I know I'll be coming back to this game. This one is definitely one to try unless you absolutely hate racing games or you absolutely love realistic racing games. The other Souls-like game we have in this bundle is The Surge 2, which is set in a dystopic sci-fi world. You start as a survivor of a plane crash and somehow land yourself in a prison facility. Something goes wrong and you have to fight your way to escape into Jericho City. I did play the first game and I quit after a few hours because I couldn't really get into it. I thought the story was revealed so slowly and couldn't be interested in it long enough to keep going. I feel like The Surge 2 is better in that regard, but it's really hard to say after only an hour. Within my time playing, I didn't get too far out of the tutorial prison escape area, so I couldn't explore the city that much. Although, I did feel that this game felt more open once you're in the city than its predecessor, which took place just in a factory. The Surge 2 seems like we'll have a larger scope this time, which I think will be a good thing. One of the most unique things about The Surge 2, and the first one as well to anyone who's interested, is the ability to harvest parts from the enemies you face. You could target various body parts to gain their weapons or blueprints for armor. Eventually, you could farm multiple parts to gather resources in order to upgrade your current equipment. It can make battles more tense because if there's a piece you need, then you might need to drag the fight out a bit longer in order to gather what you want. I think this game is definitely worth it, and you should give it a try. I imagine I'll give The Surge 2 the same treatment I gave the first one, and hopefully it holds my attention longer this time around. Yakuza 3 is a continuation of the gang life story of Kiryu Kazuma. I never played the previous two in the series, but an hour with this was enough for me to want to go back and start with the first one. By this game, Kiryu has stepped out of his Yakuza life to run an orphanage in Okinawa, although obviously something happens to mess up his retirement. I was honestly surprised with the amount of story in this game. For most of the hour that I played with it, I felt that a large part of it was cutscenes or recap of what happened previously. The little bit of gameplay that I managed had me running through Kamurocho, a fictitious district within Tokyo. I thought a lot of things were pretty realistic, and it reminded me a lot of the places here where I live in Japan. One major pillar of this game is its combat system. So far, I felt the combat was decent, although I don't think it was as smooth as something like the Arkham Batman games or Sleeping Dogs, which might be a closer comparison. There seemed to be a relationship system in the game as well, as I was building my friendship/parent relationship with Haruka, a young girl he took under his wing. Also, I heard that there are a bunch of minigames in the Yakuza series that can distract you. And yeah, I spent way too much time on this claw game. Got the fat cat, though. This game is definitely worth a try. As I already said, I want to play through the first two that I own from a previous bundle, and then work my way back to this one so I can get the entirety of the story. The last game in the bundle that I haven't talked about yet is Hammerting. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to redeem this key due to where I live, so please keep in mind that what I say is based on what I've seen and what others think. Hammerting is an early access colony builder with an ant farm perspective similar to something like Oxygen Not Included. You control a band of dwarves and have to set up a lucrative production chain to create equipment for a war raging on the surface. As you explore and delve deeper to get the best materials, you also need to contend with threats yourself. The game looks really interesting and it's sitting at a mostly positive review score on Steam. Also, the devs are regularly updating it, with the last update being June 30th. So it seems like something worth trying out, especially if you're into colony management games. Okay, so we reached the end of the video. Let's wrap this up and see if this bundle is worth it or not. I based my rating solely on whether I thought the game was worth playing, on about an hour or so of hands-on gameplay. I feel that with most games, an hour should be enough time to determine if it's something that I'd like. And I'm really judging the worth as to whether I feel you should invest any time into said game. And overall, this bundle is an overwhelming yes, it's worth it. I felt that almost every game in this bundle was worth at least giving a try. The three big headliners being Yakuza 3, The Surge 2, and Dirt 5 were all very good titles and well worth the price of the bundle. Out of the supporting cast of games, I'd say Elderborn and then Paradise Killer were the most standout titles, not to mention both having great soundtracks. Although, I'd recommend Paradise Killer for those into a game where you really have to think. From those two, I'd then place Nimbatus, Deadly Days, and Ancient Domains of Mystery. All three of those were decent, but I think they fill a certain niche audience. Maybe not so much Deadly Days because of its easy accessibility. For Bee Simulator and Kill It With Fire, I'd recommend them because they seem short and to the point. Neither were amazing, but I think for a few hours of fun, there's no harm in trying them out. I'll throw Hammerting into the recommend too, only because it seemed interesting enough and has steady updates. As I said earlier though, I don't have any hands-on with the game, so please take that into consideration. Finally, the only game I wouldn't bother with at all is Swine. It's not bad per se, but as I said, I think Company of Heroes scratches that kind of RTS itch so much better for me. Anyway, I hope that you found this useful. If you did, please feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks again and have a nice day.